strikes, quote, murder. Trump announced the U.S. will ramp up tariffs and cut off payments to Colombia. The U.S. has already provided more than $200 million to Colombia this fiscal year. It is also by far the biggest backer of Colombian security, sending billions of dollars there every year. The U.S. has now killed some 30 people across 7 strikes like this one on drug trafficking boats in the Caribbean. Some of those were Colombian citizens. Joining me now, former Colombian Minister of Defense and former ambassador to the U.S., Juan Carlos Pinzon. Thanks so much for joining.
Well, thank you so much, Jim. Thank you for having me.
So first of all, as you've been watching these strikes, are they, in your view, a violation of Colombia's sovereignty?
Well, let me put it this way. Drug traffickers and criminals do not have borders. They violate all kinds of borders. And by the way, with the money they produce, what they do is basically create violence against Colombians and destroy your country and destroy the Amazon. And by the way, attack Colombian armed forces. And that's really the problem. So at the end, anything that is done to defeat organized crime, terrorism, or those kind of groups is something that is positive at the end for our own country.
It's positive even if you're not certain that these are drug traffickers trafficking drugs. I mean, the question becomes, should there be a legal process before the U.S. carries out deadly strikes?
Well, there's, full set of international humanitarian law, among other things, that define who a threat can be, who cannot, and what they are doing. By the way, usually these kind of guys present themselves a different thing of who they are. They don't keep saying, hey, I'm a drug trafficker, I'm a bad guy, I'm a criminal, I'm a terrorist. They don't do that. They just present themselves as being good citizens in a big boat, full of drugs, typically. So, yes, there's an intelligence process, there's a legal process that always need to be followed, but I have no any doubt that many of these cases, if not all, are related to drug trafficking and criminals.
Tell me about President Gustavo Petro's response to these strikes so far. Do you agree with those responses? He called these attacks murder.
I think he has been justifying a lot of criminal. And that's a problem now for my country. He has created a policy called total peace, paz total in Spanish, that implies that criminals and terrorists are getting benefits with the hope of peace, but at the end getting all kinds of alternatives. And thirdly, he has justified in public the idea of the business of cocaine and has compared that even to oil or to sugar, just to mention some. So, of course, that has created a different stance for Colombia. Colombia for years was the country that fought harder and more organized crime than any other country in the world. We were the example to the world. And of course, we have presented a lot of sacrifice. By the way, still today, our military, our soldiers are fighting for that kind of, or to those kind of criminals. But the bad news is that our president, the president of Colombia, hasn't really complied to fight them, and the country has justified that. And that has created this very complicated scenario for Colombia that we never thought we were going to have it, but here we are.
Do the Colombian people, in your view, cheer or support these attacks by the American military?
What I would say is that the majority of Colombians are really worried about what is going on in terms of deterioration of security. We're having the largest deterioration in security in decades. I can tell you that we have today the largest production of cocaine in history, the largest production of illegal gold in history, the largest levels of extortion, homicide is going back, and other elements of security are deteriorating. Not to tell that our armed forces that used to be the strongest in the Western Hemisphere after the US are now really weakened and in a very difficult position. So that's a little bit of the reality that Colombians are perceiving and suffering these days. So I wish our president can react and can understand that his cooperation with the United States, with other countries, with the world is the best way to, fight and diminish crime, but not by allowing them to expand, which is sadly what is happening.
Colombia, of course, has national elections just 8 months away. Are you planning to challenge the Colombian president in those elections?
I'm thinking seriously on doing that. You know, a lot of people has called me onto that, mainly because of the deterioration in security, in the economy, in the healthcare system. And because of that, you know, I feel that responsibility on my shoulders. And I feel that I have to do anything for my country. By the way, this is the reason why I'm here today in Washington, because I had to come to Washington because the Colombian government has no access anymore to do things to protect our people. So if tariffs come to my people, it's going to be bad. If security support is going to be cut, it's going to be bad for our country. So I'm here to fight for Colombians and to defend Colombians' interests. That's what I'm here for.
If you were to be elected, and granted this is some time from now, would you, under your leadership, would Colombia cooperate with Donald Trump's and these U.S. military strikes on cartels in the region, including those that carry Colombians?
Let me put it this way. Probably they will not be needed because we will be fighting the terrorists and the criminals inside Colombia, as we did in my time as Minister of Defense. We did that before. You know, Colombia was the most successful country fighting terrorism and crime. And sadly, that looks like now ancient history. We got to go back to protect our people. We got to go back to provide to our people the best opportunities. And out of security, what you create is the conditions for economic prosperity. Colombia is full of minerals, full of water, full of natural resources, and incredible capacity to produce food to the world. So what we have to create is this sense of future and prosperity. We can do that with some level of law and order, with some level of security for Colombians. And that's what we have lost.
Juan Carlos Pinzon, Colombian opposition leader, as you say, former Minister of Defense. Thanks so much for joining us. We appreciate it.
Thank you, Jim. I appreciate it. Thanks.
Well, China's Communist Party elites kicking off a multi-day meeting to approve the country's plan for the next 5 years. It's a 5-year plan. Leader Xi Jinping delivered a speech outlining the draft proposals